Hello everyone and welcome back to Affinity for Commander. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be taking a look at Agatha of the Vile Cauldron and the filthy things you can do with her cost reduction ability. If you like any of the cards I'm going to be talking about here today, then be sure to head over to cardmarket.com for all your purchasing needs. Or, if you're from the land of fried chicken and country roads that take you home, then be sure to use our affiliate links for TCG Player or our discount code for Flipside Gaming. Using these links does not cost you anything extra, but really helps channel out quite a lot. Now, on to Agatha and her questionable cooking pot. Agatha of the Vile Cauldron is a 1/1 legendary human warlock for 1 red and 1 green mana. She reads: activated abilities of creatures you control cost X less to cast, where X is Agatha of the Vile Cauldron's power. This effect can't reduce the mana in that cost to less than 1 mana. And for 4 generic, 1 red and 1 green, other creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and haste until the end of turn. Agatha's ability functions the same as Training Grounds, for example. However, her reduction isn't set like the enchantment's is, as by increasing her power, we can reduce the costs further. For example, by sticking a Rancor onto our lovely witch, then all our abilities are now reduced by 3 generic mana. Importantly, this also includes her own ability, which is by itself not 6 mana, it is in fact 5 mana. And this ability itself is going to form one of our primary win cons, as is a great mana sink, especially when we get around to making an infinite amount of it. But let's start at the 1-drop slot for this deck. We've got Mana Dorks in Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, Boreal Druid and Delighted Halfling. These little guys give us more mana to activate more abilities with, can serve as card draw later on, and will act as good bodies to beef up with Agatha's ability. As mentioned, Rancor is a good cheap way of increasing Agatha's power to increase her cost reducing effect, and so is Commander's Plate, which also has the much needed benefit of keeping Agatha safe from any pesky Esper interference. Speaking of keeping Agatha safe, Snakeskin Veil and Silk Guard both give Agatha a +1/+1 counter and then grant hexproof. This saves her from any kill spell and buffs her to reduce our ability costs further. Up to the 2-drop slot, we've got more ramp in 3 Visits and Nature's Law to grab a forest card, and we've also got Goblin Anarchomancer, a little creature that makes all our spells 1 cheaper. Moving on from these, we've got our first few creatures with activated abilities in Dragon Whisperer, a token generator who does only work if our creatures equal 8 power, but considering this is a creature heavy deck, that shouldn't be an issue. Duskwatch Recruiter is already a great card for the card advantage it generates, but potentially making its ability only a single green puts on the verge of broken territory. Goro, Disciple of Rusei, is a nice haste enabler, but more importantly can make us 5/5 dragons if we attack with a modified creature, which can be stacked to be activated multiple times. Our last 2 creatures are both green, with some ramp in Incubation Druid, whose adapt ability we can hopefully get down to just being double green, and Weaver of Harmony has a completely irrelevant buffing effect, but a good way of doubling up our abilities. This doubling up of our abilities is accomplished by also using Illusionist's Braces, which is also a great way to double up Agatha's pump effect as well. Which, if I'm being totally honest, for the amount of stuff we're sticking on Agatha, this might just be a pseudo Voltron deck at this point, which, I'm okay with that. Up to the 3-drop slot, however, we've got our bulk of abilities and my hands down favourite card in the entire deck. But before we get on to that, we have our tiny bit of removal in Chaos Warp and Beast Within. These get rid of anything we don't like and make up about half the instance of the entire deck. Back onto the creatures though. Eternal Witness to grab back any important pieces, Farhaven Elf to ramp us more and provides another body to pump later, and Guardian Augmenter, a 3-mana means of protecting Agatha from any rude kill spells while also increasing her power to reduce ability costs. We've then got creatures whose abilities we can make more reasonably costed with Rada, Heart of Keld, who is a solid means of playing lands on the top of our library, but the second ability, especially when paired and cheapened with Agatha, is the one that's going to be seriously reducing our opponent's life totals. And my favourite card in the entire deck, Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. A good mana producer to cast all our creatures, but more importantly, because Biorhythm is still banned, for some reason, it is a fantastic secondary win-con with that expensive ability. Now, don't get me wrong, putting Agatha to 9 power is not impossible, but it isn't realistically going to happen that often. But just being able to reduce this biorhythmic effect down by a little makes it all the more likely that the control player with no creatures is just going to die to one activation. Our last ability creature at the 3 CMC slot is Yasan Wandering Bard, a lovely tutor that for hopefully 1 green mana can find what we need and work his way up in mana value. The few support cards we've got include Growing Rites of Itlmoc to grab as a creature, but also Flip into Cradle of the Sun to tap for a boatload of mana. Tribute to the World Tree is a great draw engine for our bigger creatures, or a buffing enchantment with +1/+1 counters. Something that works very well to increase Agatha's power, but also synergizes well with Goro Goro. And the last spell in the 3 CMC slot is Vivian, Champion of the Wilds. A card I have a pet love for the ability to be able to cast creatures whenever we like, and her -2 just being more card advantage. On to the 4 mana value cards, the first cards to mention are something that give the deck a bit more of an edge. Beast Whisperer lets us draw for every creature spell we cast. Diva and Nature's Herald lets us play the vast majority of our deck with Flash so they can attack on our turn, and Anger to grant the all-important haste so that we can activate cards like Yasan the turn they come in. Which, yes, we do need Anger in the bin, but that realistically shouldn't be a problem. From these we've got more abilities to reduce in cost with Bramble Sovereign, who now for only 1 green mana will double up our creatures. Captivating Crew to just plain steal our opponent's creatures, thus reducing their blockers and hopefully leading us to swinging in for some massive damage. Both Nihilists for the Pump ability and Trample, as well as the cost reduction and card draw of the Keen-Eyed. Something to note, however, is that Agatha's ability cost doesn't work on these gods if they aren't creatures due to her devotion clause, so something to keep in mind. Ortheon, Hero of Lava Bring to get a 1 red mana clone effect, or a reduced means of copying one of our larger creatures 5 times to get in for some serious damage. Pelucranos, World Eater, is a rather high-costed fighting beast, but reducing that cost way down will make it a massive problem for our opponents by just eating their boards. And another card from Theros, Perforos, God of the Forge, not only has a baby buff ability on them, but will also help chip away at our opponent's life totals, especially considering how many tokens we're hopefully going to be generating. And the last ability creature to mention here is Ulvenwald Oddity, a 4/4/4 with haste and trample. But when flipped for a reduced amount, we get Ulvenwald Behemoth, an 8/8 that buffs our entire team with trample and haste, which includes Agatha, increasing her power, so reducing her ability's cost as well. The last 2 cards to mention of the 4 CMC variety are Bear Umbra for several reasons. The buff it gives Agatha reduces her costs further, Totem Armor saves them from a board wipe or destroy effect, and finally being able to double our mana by, say, activating her own ability main 1, then getting to either do it again before blockers are declared, or just have more mana available in our main 2 is still insane. And finally, Forgotten Ancient, a card synergizes well with both cards like Goro Goro who need attack power or modified creatures, but also Agatha as a means of increasing her power with +1/+1 counters. Also, I just kind of think he's neat. Gets counters, gets bigger. He's a tree. Up to the 5-drop slot now, and we've got cards like Genesis, which, when it is in the grave, we can return any creature we want to hand to keep recurring problems for our opponents. Silklash Spider is our answer to any spirit or dragon deck. And our last creature of the 5 CMC slot is Vorinclex. A nice land tutor on entry, but will mainly be there to flip for a reduced cost into the Grand Evolution. Recursion, massive counter buffs, and finally just all around fighting. And he then returns to trigger his ETB once more. I actually do really love these Phyrexian Sagas, I think they're just so good. The only non-creature spell here is a much needed draw card in Shamanic Revelations. The draw shouldn't be an issue since, we're a creature deck, and gaining the life should also happen fairly frequently considering the amount of dragons we should be pumping out. Now finally, up to the top slots, we're running Hellkite Charger as additional combat steps in a deck focused on combat is always good, especially when it hopefully costs just 2 red mana. Woodland Bellower to fetch us any ramp we need, or for me just to get the Shaman pretty much every single time. And Etali Primal Conqueror rounds of our creatures with being a disgusting ETB with an even more disgusting ability that turns them into Etali Primal Sickness. A reprint of Blightstone Colossus if I've ever seen one. The last 2 cards are both helpful draw effects, with Rishkar's Expertise granting us a free spell as well, and the Great Henge. A beautiful draw engine, plus getting counters on our creatures to buff our board, and hopefully cast Agatha with it out to reduce all abilities by 2. So this deck overall wants to be playing creatures and then hitting our opponents with them to reduce their life totals to 0. However, sometimes people have blockers, and that's not okay. So what we need is mana, and I mean all of it. In fact, we need so much mana that we're going to make our board swole as hell to just trample over all of our opponent's pesky blockers. Which does make me think it must be very good whatever she's cooking in there. In the deck we have a few ways to make this happen. Team of Sabertooth with Dockside Extortionist accomplishes this by generating us infinite treasures, with the preface that Dockside makes at least 5 treasures when they enter. So we can activate the Sabertooth's ability to return the goblin to our hand, and then replay it, thus saving 1 treasure at least each time. We're also running the Food Chain Squee Goblin Nabob combo, whereby we exile Squee with the enchantment to generate 4 mana, and then use this to recast Squee, netting 1 coloured mana each time. Using either of these combos generates us infinite red and green mana, and thus able to activate Agatha's ability as many times as we want. And even if we've just got 4 creatures out, that is still 1 creature that is impossibly big to kill each of our opponents. Which, coming to think of it, would also include Squee, which is just impossibly hilarious to die to an infinitely big Squee. I'm totally going to do that. And lastly, the lands for the deck. We do have a few rather unique ones for our creature-based deck. Bonder's Enclave to draw additional cards, Castle Garenbrig is a lovely way of ramping for our creatures, and Khan's Bastion to bolster our creatures with all those lovely +1/+1 counters we'll be putting on them. Keswick Wolf Run is just one of my favourite lands of all time, as you get to swing and bluff about just how much money you're going to sink into it. This way you can bait out bad blocks, or just get in for a ton of damage. Opal Palace to add more counters to our lovely witch each time we need to cast her, and she's only 2 mana to start out with, so 1 additional isn't exactly backbreaking. And finally, a bit of a random one that I quite like is Raging Ravine. Now, creature lands in Commander aren't exactly great most of the time, but the fact that it adds counters to itself on attack means it can trigger our counter or modified synergies. And that ability, once activated, can then be activated repeatedly to add more instances of the same effect. So the creature will attack and will add a number of counters equal to the amount of times we've activated that ability. Maybe not the most efficient use of mana, but a massive creature that dodges sorcery speed removal is never a bad thing to have, really. Overall, I love Agatha for her training grounds or Zerda-esque ability, and the fact that she is herself a mana sink in Gruul is just icing on the cake. Another thing I like about her is that she can just be built to be that casual Gruul commander that reduces ability costs. or you can build a deck to literally search out the combo pieces and then just hit everyone for infinite damage on turn 4. You know, either works. She's definitely one of my favourite legends to come out of this set so far, and honestly I'm looking forward to seeing her in play. And also kind of wondering what she's making in that pot there. Whatever it is, I imagine it's high in protein though. And that will be the end of the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. What is your favourite legend to come out of the wilds of Eldraine? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one of them. As always, this video is brought to you and made possible thanks to the support of our amazing patrons. You guys are truly awesome. If you too would like to become a patron of the channel and get access to exclusive EDH related rewards, then be sure to check out our link in the description box. You can also support the channel through the quick and easy ways, liking this video, subscribing to the channel, sharing it, and hitting the bell icon so you never miss a video. But that will be it from me for now, guys. As always, I've been Alex, and I will see you next time.